The small village garden lay quietly beneath the wide sky, an unassuming patch of earth cradled by low stone walls and the muted colors of the surrounding homes. Its soil, cracked and dusty from weeks of unyielding sun, whispered of forgotten promises and patient hope. The garden was neither wild nor meticulously ordered. It was a gentle space marked by the subtle weight of waiting, where the soft shadows of late afternoon stretched long over dry stems and curled leaves. Here the earth held its breath, yearning for the touch of rain, its surface hardened yet tender beneath. The villagers spoke of the garden with a reverence woven from memory and longing. It was said to be a place that would bloom only when the long-awaited rain finally came, a sacred pause in the cycle of seasons that had grown longer with each passing year. The elders told stories of past rains, when the soil drank deep and the flowers burst forth in colors so vivid they seemed to breathe light into the village itself. Now those stories were carried like fragile seeds in the hearts of those who tended the garden, waiting for the day when the clouds would gather again and the earth would soften beneath their feet. Among those who cared for the garden was Mira, a young woman whose hands bore the marks of gentle labor, and whose eyes held a quiet determination. She came every morning before the sun climbed too high, moving through the narrow paths with deliberate care. Her touch was light but sure, as she brushed away fallen leaves and scattered a small handful of water saved from distant wells. The water was precious, rationed carefully and carried in a weathered clay jug that had belonged to her mother. Myra's daily visits were more than routine. They were an act of faith, a silent conversation with the soil and the dormant seeds beneath. Myra's mother had once spoken to her of the garden's resilience, weaving tales of its ability to endure drought and hardship, holding on to life even when the world seemed harsh and unyielding. The garden waits, her mother had said softly, but it never forgets how to grow. Those words had settled deep into Myra's heart, shaping the way she moved through the garden and the village. She believed in the promise of renewal, in the slow unfolding of life beneath the surface, even when the earth looked barren and the sky refused to weep. The garden itself was a patchwork of forgotten roots and hopeful beginnings. Along the edges, scrubby herbs clung stubbornly to dry soil, their leaves curled but still green, faintly fragrant against the dust. In the center, a bed of wildflowers lay dormant, their seeds nestled beneath a crust of earth that cracked softly in the morning light. The occasional brittle stem reached upwards, a silent signal of life just beneath the surface, waiting for the gentle coaxing of moisture. Mira knelt often, her hands sifting lightly through the soil, feeling for the hidden pulse of growth beneath the dry crust. Around the garden, the village stirred with its own quiet rhythms. Doors opened to greet the day, and the scent of baking bread mingled with the dust on the air. Children's laughter echoed faintly from the narrow lanes, and neighbors exchanged nods and brief smiles as they passed. The garden was a shared secret among them, a space that held the collective hopes and memories of many hands and hearts. Though the sun baked the earth and the sky remained clear, the villagers found solace in the garden's patient waiting, as if its very stillness offered a promise that change was not far away. Myra's presence in the garden was a thread that connected past and future. Her fingers traced the outlines of stones worn smooth by time, and she spoke softly to the earth, murmuring names of plants that had once thrived here: lavender, sage, and wild rose. She imagined their scents filling the air again, weaving through the village streets and drawing smiles from those who remembered. In these quiet moments, the garden was not empty or lifeless but a space filled with anticipation, where every cracked patch of soil held the memory of rain and the possibility of bloom. Each day, Mira carried with her a small bundle of stories, passed down from her mother and the village elders. They told of a time when the rain was certain, when the garden thrived under open skies, and when the earth yielded fruit without hesitation. These stories were like seeds themselves, planted deep within Myra's soul, nurturing her resolve as she watered the dry soil and cleared the paths. She believed that, like the garden, hope could endure long droughts, waiting patiently for the moment it could unfurl. The sun climbed higher as Mira worked, casting a warm glow that softened the edges of the garden and painted the village in hues of gold and ochre. She paused often, wiping the sweat from her brow with a cloth that smelled faintly of lavender, a reminder of the garden's promise. Around her, the silence was thick but not empty. It hummed with the subtle energy of life on the brink, the slow stirring of earth and root beneath the cracked surface. Myra's breath matched the rhythm of the garden's quiet vigil, steady and unhurried, as she moved with care among the tender shoots of hope. In the afternoons, when the heat settled into a heavy stillness, Mira would sit on a low stone wall that bordered the garden, her gaze sweeping over the parched earth and the stubborn plants that clung to life. She thought of her mother's voice, soft and sure, weaving through the memory of rain and renewal. The garden was a patient witness to time, a place where waiting was not passive but alive with promise. As the village carried on around her, Mira held on to that promise, tending the garden with hands that understood both loss and hope. The village itself seemed to breathe with the garden's rhythm, each day a quiet meditation on endurance and faith. The cracked soil, the dry leaves, the faint scent of earth warmed by the sun, all spoke of a story unfolding slowly, one that could only be told in the language of patience and care. Mira's footsteps among the rows of dormant plants were a gentle reminder that even in the harshest seasons, life persisted beneath the surface, waiting for the rain to return and awaken the garden's hidden heart. As evening approached, the garden settled into a soft stillness, the colors fading into the muted tones of dusk. Mira gathered her water jug and brushed her hands together, leaving the garden to its quiet vigil. The soil, though cracked and dry, held its secrets close, cradling the promise of renewal. Mira's heart, too, was steady with belief, carrying the stories of her mother and the village like a quiet flame. Tomorrow she would return, and the garden would wait with her, patient and enduring, beneath the ever-watchful sky. Each morning Mira returned to the garden with the same quiet devotion, her footsteps soft against the cracked earth as if not to disturb its fragile hope. The air was still, save for the faint rustle of dried leaves and the occasional hum of a distant bird, as if the garden itself held its breath in concert with the village. Mira knelt among the withered stems and brittle patches of soil, her fingers tracing gentle paths along the earth's surface, stirring the dust with a tenderness that spoke of long familiarity and patient care. She carried with her a small jug, its earthen surface worn smooth by years of use, filled with water drawn from wells far beyond the village. The water was precious and measured carefully, each drop a gift coaxed from the depths of the parched land. Mira poured it slowly over the roots of stubborn herbs and the beds where seeds lay hidden beneath the surface, scattering moisture in delicate arcs that glistened briefly before soaking into the thirsty soil. The act was both ritual and reassurance, a quiet promise whispered to the garden that it was not forgotten. Beneath the cracked crust of earth, faint signs of life stirred. Mira had noticed them in the subtle green blush that peeked through the dust, the fragile shoots that dared to reach upward despite the relentless sun. There was the faintest scent of earth after heat, a dry but hopeful fragrance that hinted at the pulse of growth beneath the surface. These small signs were the garden's silent replies to Mira's care, a slow and patient awakening that required no words but spoke volumes in the language of root and leaf. Each day Mira's routine wove together hope and patience, a rhythm shaped by the cycles of sun and shadow. She began her mornings tending to the soil, scattering water sparingly and removing dry leaves that threatened to smother the tender shoots. In the afternoons she would sit quietly on the low stone wall, her gaze resting on the garden's stillness as she whispered encouragement to the seeds sleeping beneath the earth. Her voice was soft, carrying the stories her mother had told her, the tales of resilience and renewal that had become a lifeline in times of drought. Her care was not solitary. Though many villagers passed by with busy hands and hurried steps, they too felt the garden's quiet endurance. Some paused briefly to watch Mira's gentle ministrations, their expressions softening with a shared understanding. The garden had become a place of solace for the village, a symbol of waiting and hope that mirrored the villagers' own lives. In the midst of hardship, its patient vigil offered a quiet comfort, a reminder that beneath the surface life endured. Mira's water was a thread connecting past to present, drawn from wells that had long sustained the village, carried across dry paths with care and reverence. She thought often of the ancestors who had tended the garden before her, their hands digging into the same soil, their hopes as steadfast as hers. The garden was a living memory, its quiet endurance a testament to the faith of those who had believed in rain and renewal, even in the harshest seasons. Slowly the garden began to respond. The faint green shoots grew bolder, pushing through the cracked earth with a fragile insistence. The herbs released a faint fragrance, a whisper of what had been and what might be again. Mira watched with a quiet smile as tiny buds appeared, swelling gently beneath the protective soil. The garden's pulse grew stronger, a subtle rhythm that pulsed beneath the surface like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. This quiet transformation did not go unnoticed. Villagers began to speak in hushed tones of the garden's resilience, sharing stories of earlier times when the earth had been generous. Children, once restless and distracted, found themselves drawn to the garden's edges, their curiosity kindled by the subtle signs of life. The village breathed a little easier, comforted by the garden's patient waiting and the hope it nurtured. Myra's presence became a steadying force in this unfolding story. She moved with a quiet grace among the plants, her hands skilled in the delicate work of tending to fragile life. She cleared away dry leaves that threatened to choke new growth, carefully loosened soil to let air reach hidden roots, and watered with a measured hand that balanced scarcity with nurture. Each gesture was a conversation with the earth, a dialogue of care that wove together the past and the future. In the afternoons, when the sun dipped low and the air cooled, Mira would linger in the garden's stillness. She spoke softly to the plants, naming them as if calling old friends Sage, Thyme, and Wild Violet, invoking the memories carried in their names. Her voice was gentle, filled with a reverence that seemed to stir the air itself. The garden responded in kind, its faint green shoots growing a little stronger, its soil softening beneath the touch of water and warmth. The garden's endurance inspired the village in subtle ways. It became a quiet beacon of hope amid the daily struggles, a reminder that patience and care could nurture life even in the harshest conditions. Neighbors began to share water and stories, drawing strength from the garden's example. The children learned to watch for signs of growth, their eyes bright with wonder at the faint pulse of life beneath the earth. The garden was no longer just a place of waiting. It had become a symbol of resilience and quiet strength. Myra's heart was bound to the garden in ways she could not fully explain. Each day of tending was a meditation, a weaving together of hope and memory. She felt the pulse of life beneath her fingers, the slow unfolding of growth that required nothing but faith and patience. The garden was a living story, one she was privileged to tend, a story written in soil and leaf, in whispered encouragement and the gentle touch of water. As the days stretched on, the garden's quiet vigil deepened. The green shoots multiplied, weaving a delicate tapestry across the once barren earth. The scent of herbs grew stronger, a subtle perfume that mingled with the warmth of the sun and the dry dust of the village streets. Myra's hands moved tirelessly among the plants, her care a constant presence that nurtured the garden's slow awakening. The village embraced the garden's quiet transformation. It became a place where people gathered in small moments of pause, sharing stories, exchanging smiles, and finding solace in the shared hope of renewal. The garden's patient endurance was a mirror of their own resilience, a testament to the power of faith and care in the face of uncertainty. Myra's routine was steady and unhurried, a rhythm that matched the garden's own slow pulse. She rose before dawn, carrying her water jug across the village streets to the garden's edge. Her fingers dug gently into the soil, coaxing life from the earth with each measured pour. The garden was a living prayer, a quiet testament to the belief that even in the harshest seasons, life endured beneath the surface, waiting for the rain to come. In the fading light of each day, Mira would rest on the stone wall, her gaze tracing the lines of green that threaded through the earth. She breathed in the faint scent of growth, the promise that the garden held within its patient waiting. The village around her settled into evening calm, and the garden too seemed to hold its breath, a fragile sanctuary of hope and quiet endurance beneath the vast, watchful sky. The air shifted slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, as the dry winds that had swept through the village softened into something warmer, heavier, an unseen weight pressing gently against the skin. The sky, once a clear expanse of relentless blue, began to gather subtle hues of gray at its edges, clouds stretching thin and tentative like whispers of a promise. The village held its breath beneath this changing sky, sensing the stirrings of something long awaited, but still uncertain. Mira moved through the garden with a quiet resolve that matched the subtle transformation around her. Each morning she carried her water jug as always, but now her eyes sought more than just the tender shoots and softening soil. She watched the horizon, where the clouds gathered in hesitant formations, and felt the air grow thick with unspoken anticipation. Though the sun still claimed its place for much of the day, there was a new heaviness in the warmth, a humidity that clung to the skin and hinted at change. The garden itself seemed to respond to the shifting atmosphere. The small buds that had been swelling beneath the surface grew fuller, their outlines softening as if preparing to bloom. The earth, once hard and cracked, began to yield slightly beneath Myra's careful touch, the soil darkening with hints of moisture that had yet to be seen but could now be felt. A faint pulse of life stirred beneath the surface, subtle and steady, as if the garden was awakening from a long, patient slumber. Myra's days intertwined tightly with the garden's quiet transformation. Her determination remained unwavering, even as uncertainty flickered at the edges of her hope. Each morning she knelt among the fragile shoots, her hands brushing gently against leaves that trembled with new life. She watered sparingly, mindful of the preciousness of each drop, and whispered words of encouragement, her voice carrying the stories her mother once told. Tales of renewal and the faith that had sustained generations. The village, too, felt the stirrings beneath the surface. Conversations shifted from resignation to cautious optimism, the memory of past rains rekindling in the hearts of the villagers. Elder women spoke in hushed tones about the signs in the sky, while children pressed their faces against windows to watch the slow dance of clouds above. The garden's quiet pulse seemed to echo through the village streets, weaving a thread of shared hope that bound neighbors closer together. One afternoon, as Mira tended to a cluster of swelling buds, a gentle breeze swept through the garden, carrying with it a scent both faint and unmistakable, the sweet, earthy aroma of rain yet to fall. It was a breath of promise that stirred the leaves and sent a ripple through the village's collective spirit. Mira closed her eyes, letting the scent wash over her, feeling the garden's quiet strength resonate beneath her fingertips. The earth beneath her knees felt soft and yielding, a stark contrast to the brittle crust it had been only days before. Tiny droplets of moisture glistened faintly on the leaves, as if the garden itself had begun to drink from the lingering humidity in the air. Myra's heart quickened with a mixture of hope and reverence. She knew that the moment she had awaited was drawing near, though the sky had yet to break open. As the days passed, the garden's influence spread quietly through the village. Memories of past rains surfaced in stories shared around evening fires, tales of sudden storms that had transformed the earth and filled the air with the scent of wet stone and blossoming flowers. The villagers found themselves drawn to the garden's edges more often, their footsteps slowing as they watched the tender shoots push upward with newfound vigor. Myra's life and the garden's fate became inseparable threads woven into the fabric of the village's daily rhythm. She rose early, worked with steady hands, and rested only when the sun dipped low behind the hills. Her care was meticulous but tender, a balance of nurturing and restraint that honored the garden's fragile awakening. Each bud and leaf was a testament to her faith, a small miracle unfolding beneath her watchful gaze. The clouds above thickened gradually, their gray tones deepening into richer shades as the day wore on. The air grew heavier still, charged with an electric tension that made the hairs on Myra's arms stand on end. The garden seemed to pulse in response, the soil darkening further, the shoots growing stronger and more confident in their reach toward the sky. A distant rumble echoed faintly through the valley, a low and promising sound that stirred the village from its quiet waiting. In these moments the garden was more than earth and plant. It was a living testament to endurance and hope, a sanctuary where the boundaries between past and future blurred. Mira felt the weight of generations in the soil beneath her, the whispered prayers of those who had tended this patch of earth before her. The garden held their stories, their hopes, their unyielding belief in the rhythm of renewal, and now it was awakening to fulfill that promise once more. As twilight settled, casting long shadows that softened the edges of the garden, Mira lingered among the buds and leaves. She placed her hand gently on the soil, feeling its pulse beneath her palm, steady and sure. The village around her grew quiet, the soft murmur of voices fading into the night. Above, the clouds thickened into a dark veil, the promise of rain hanging just beyond reach. Myra's breath was slow and measured, matching the garden's patient rhythm. She thought of the stories her mother had told, of rains that had come after long waits, filling the earth and the air with life and light. The garden was on the cusp of transformation, its quiet strength a beacon in the shifting weather. Tomorrow, she knew, might bring the change they had all been waiting for. But tonight, the garden held its promise close, wrapped in the heavy, expectant air beneath the gathering clouds. The air was thick with anticipation, heavy and electric, as the village held its breath beneath a sky swollen with clouds. The long-awaited rain approached like a whispered blessing, softening the edges of the horizon and filling the atmosphere with the scent of earth and promise. The garden, once dry and patient in its waiting, seemed to lean into the coming storm, its soil ready to drink deeply and its fragile shoots poised to unfurl in a celebration of life reborn. Mira stood at the edge of the garden, her hands clasped loosely in front of her, eyes lifted to the darkening sky. The clouds rolled in slowly, gathering weight and depth, their gray hues shifting to rich charcoal and slate. A gentle wind stirred the air, carrying the first cool breaths of rain before the drops had even begun to fall. The village around her was quiet, as if the earth itself were listening, waiting for the moment when the heavens would open and the long drought would end. When the rain finally arrived, it came not as a sudden downpour but as a gentle blessing, soft and steady. The first drops kissed the parched earth with a delicate touch, soaking into the cracked soil and sending up the faint, sweet scent of wet dust. Mira stepped forward, barefoot on the flagstones bordering the garden, feeling the coolness seep through her skin, grounding her in the moment. Each drop was a promise fulfilled, a renewal whispered between sky and soil. The garden responded instantly, as if waking from a deep sleep. Leaves unfurled with a fresh green brilliance, their edges trembling with joy. The buds Mira had watched so carefully began to bloom, petals opening slowly like hands reaching toward the light. The soil darkened and softened beneath the rain's embrace, rich and fragrant, a living carpet of life renewed. The garden's dormant heart beat strong again, pulsing with the rhythm of rain and growth. Mira moved through the garden with reverence, her fingers brushing lightly over the glistening leaves and delicate blossoms. She felt a deep connection to the earth beneath her, a bond strengthened by years of waiting and care. The rain was not just water. It was a balm for the soul, a restoration of hope and the tangible proof of the garden's resilience. She whispered thanks to the sky, her voice carried away on the steady rhythm of falling rain. Around the village, the atmosphere shifted with the storm's gentle arrival. Windows opened slowly, faces turned upward to feel the soft touch of rain on skin. The scent of wet earth filled the air, mingling with the warmth of the day and the fresh, green notes of the garden's awakening. Neighbors stepped outside, sharing smiles and quiet words as they gathered in the streets, united by the arrival of life-giving water. In the garden's center, the limestone basin that had long held only dust now filled with clear, shimmering water. It reflected the sky's shifting colors, a mirror to the storm's shifting moods. Mira knelt beside it, dipping her hands into the cool liquid and lifting it to her face, letting the rain wash away the dust of waiting. The basin became a small pool of renewal, a symbol of the garden's rebirth and the promise of abundance to come. The flowers that had once seemed fragile now glowed with vitality. Roses bloomed in soft clusters, their petals heavy with raindrops that sparkled like jewels in the muted light. Violas, delicate and cheerful, opened their faces to the sky, their colors deepened by the moisture. The garden was alive with movement and scent, a place transformed by the gentle persistence of rain and the tender care of years. Mira's spirit lifted with the garden's revival. She felt the weight of hope carried in each drop, the fulfillment of the stories her mother had told, of seasons turning, of earth and sky meeting in quiet celebration. The rain washed over the village like a blessing, softening the heat and filling hearts with a renewed sense of possibility. Mira knew that the garden's rebirth was not just a return to life, but a testament to endurance and faith. As the storm continued, the rhythm of rain became a lullaby for the village. The steady patter on roofs and leaves wove a gentle music, calming and sure. Mira moved slowly, savoring the moment, her hands tracing paths through the wet earth and her eyes reflecting the shimmering greens of the garden's new growth. The transformation was both sudden and gradual, a delicate unfolding nurtured by time and tenderness. The village breathed with the rain, its people drawn to the garden's vibrant pulse. Children ran through puddles, their laughter ringing clear and bright, while elders stood at doorways, sharing stories renewed by the storm's arrival. The garden had become a living heart for the community, a place where the promise of rain was made real in bloom and leaf and scent. Mira lingered as dusk fell, the rain softening to a mist that cloaked the garden in a gentle haze. The flowers glistened under the fading light, their colors deep and shimmering. The earth beneath her feet was rich and dark, alive with the subtle movements of roots and new shoots. She felt the garden's breath beside hers, steady and full of life. In this moment the garden was a sanctuary of renewal, a quiet testament to the power of patience and care. The rain had come as a blessing, turning dormant soil into a canvas of green and bloom. Mira's heart swelled with gratitude, her spirit entwined with the garden's vibrant pulse. The season had turned, and with it, the village embraced the promise of growth and life once more. The garden had transformed into a sanctuary of vibrant life, a tapestry of color and scent woven from the patient promise of rain and tender care. The once cracked earth now held a rich, dark softness beneath a canopy of flourishing leaves and blooming flowers. Roses unfolded in delicate clusters, their petals glowing with the warmth of renewed sunlight, while violas dotted the edges with cheerful bursts of purple and yellow. The garden breathed deeply with the rhythm of growth, each leaf and stem a testament to the enduring power of hope fulfilled. Mira moved through this living sanctuary with a quiet joy, her hands moving gently among the thriving plants as if touching the pulse of the earth itself. Her days were filled with a new kind of care, not just tending to survival but celebrating abundance. She watered the garden with a lighter hand now, her touch guided by a sense of reverence for the fragile balance that nurtured this flourishing life. The garden had become a mirror of her own spirit, resilient and tender, rooted in faith and open to the gifts of renewal. The village, too, felt the subtle shift brought by the garden's transformation. Neighbors gathered more often at its edges, drawn by the scent of blossoms and the sight of green that seemed to promise a brighter season ahead. Children played beneath the shade of blossoming branches, their laughter weaving through the air like a soft melody. The garden had become a shared sanctuary, a place where time seemed to slow, and the worries of the world were softened by the gentle embrace of nature's rhythms. Mira kept a ledger, a small book worn at the edges, filled with the names of plants and the days they had opened to light. Each entry was a quiet celebration, a record of growth and renewal that connected past to present. She wrote of the roses that bloomed after the first rain, of the violets that followed in gentle clusters, and of the herbs whose scents deepened with each passing day. The ledger was more than a journal. It was a testament to patience and care, a reminder of the garden's enduring spirit. As the seasons shifted, the garden held its promise with steady grace. The heat of summer softened beneath the shade of flourishing leaves, and Mira continued her care with the same quiet devotion that had carried her through the drought. Watering became a ritual of gratitude, a daily offering to the earth that had waited so long to be filled again. The garden responded with generosity, its flowers opening wider, its herbs releasing their scents more fully, and its soil embracing the roots that had finally taken hold. The garden had become a symbol within the village, a living emblem of resilience and quiet strength. It was a place where the past lingered gently in the scent of lavender and the rustle of leaves, and where the future stretched out in the promise of bloom and fruit. Time seemed to hold its breath between seasons here, the garden's steady growth a reminder that life could endure even the harshest trials when nurtured with patience and love. In the cool mornings, Mira would sit on the stone bench at the garden's heart, her gaze drifting over the tapestry of green and color that surrounded her. She thought of her mother, whose stories had been the seeds of her own faith in this place. The garden was a living memory of those stories, a breath between generations, whispered in leaves and petals. Mira found solace in this connection, a deep sense of belonging that filled her with quiet peace. The garden had become more than a patch of earth. It was a space where hope and memory intertwined, where the gentle power of waiting had blossomed into life. Mira's care had nurtured not only the plants but the spirit of the village itself, weaving a quiet thread of renewal through the hearts of those who loved this place. Each day in the garden was a gift, a chance to witness the unfolding story of growth and grace. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows that softened the garden's edges, Mira lingered among the flowers, her hands tracing the delicate curves of petals and leaves. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and bloom, a fragrance that carried the weight of seasons and the lightness of new beginnings. The garden held its breath in the fading light, a sanctuary of life that had blossomed slowly, patiently, and fully. In these moments, the garden was a dreamlike space where the boundaries between past and present, memory and hope, blurred and softened. Mira felt the pulse of generations beneath her fingertips, the gentle strength of those who had tended this earth before her, and those who would come after. The garden was a living promise, a quiet celebration of nature's rhythm, and the human heart's capacity to wait and believe. As night settled over the village, the garden drifted into a peaceful stillness, cradled by the soft glow of stars and the cool whisper of evening breeze. It held its secrets close, a sanctuary of resilience and grace beneath the vast, watchful sky. Mira rose from the stone bench, her spirit full, leaving the garden to rest and grow, a living testament to the enduring power of patience, care, and hope fulfilled.